Welcome back to Business Week on Arise News. Well, last year, 25% of Cameroon's external trade was with Nigeria, compared with 5% of its trade with the rest of the countries in the Central Africa region. Over in West Africa, Côte d'Ivoire has had inflation at a 3-year low of 3.1% and GDP growth of almost 7%, also benefiting from stability in the regional currency, the CFA franc. What this highlights is that there is tremendous opportunity for Nigerian businesses to tap into the growing regional Francophone market, but perhaps by virtue of history, language, and culture, both Africa's Francophone and Anglophone worlds haven't always collided deeply, at least from a business and investment perspective. Although, if you ask me, the collision tends to happen more often on the football pitch. Well, recognizing the tremendous value that risks being left on the table if this trade and investment potential is not explored, Apina Law, a Cameroonian law firm, on Thursday and Friday organized the maiden edition of Francophone Africa Business Summit in Lagos. It was focused on investing in Francophone Africa and featured participants from the DRC, Cameroon, Senegal, Mauritania, Côte d'Ivoire, and of course Nigeria. It felt like the Francophone region was seeking to woo Nigerian investors, with participants such as the CEO of the Ivorian Investment Promotion Commission. I'm joined now by two champions of collaboration: Johanna Monthe, managing partner of Apina Law, who was also previously with Linklaters and DLA Piper. She's also the convener of the Francophone Africa Business Summit. Also joining on the show is Valérie Neim, founder and president of Invicte. She's a former banker and wealth manager from Cameroon. Bienvenue au programme, mesdames. Welcome to the program. I thought I'd display some of my French language there.
You did it beautifully.
So lovely to be here with both of you. So I want to start with you, Johanna. What were some of the main highlights of the Francophone Africa Business Summit?
For me, I think it was about seeing that on the spot, people were able to make deals. You know how difficult it is to make a deal? Literally, as we were going, people were coming to me and saying, can I meet with this person? And it was quite a small conference, if you wish. Therefore, it was easy to meet with people. And therefore, on the spot, people reported that, oh, I've been trying to do this for such a long time, but I wasn't able to communicate because I'm based in the DRC, and I didn't know how to access this person in Nigeria. I met him today. Deal.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, the key highlight.
So what was the original vision and idea behind this? Because a lot of Nigerians don't know so much about the dynamics of business in some Francophone markets.
No, but it's exactly that. If you wish, I mean, just by way of background, I am Francophone myself, but I was based in Nigeria for 5 years. And being here and being a Francophone, I was able to really, I suppose, commute between the two systems all the time and see that we need each other much more than what we think. Crucially, it's crucial. So that was the idea.
Yeah. And Valérie, what is the current state of business and trade? I mean, I know you've been involved in the banking sector in Cameroon and in other parts of the region. What do you think are some of the main dynamics and opportunities that exist for businesses between Nigeria and the rest of the Francophone markets?
Thank you. Thanks, Valérie, for the question, and thanks for having us this morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Before I answer that, let me congratulate Johanna once more for a beautiful summit, most needed. You know, it was right on time. Nigeria is the powerhouse, it's Africa giant. It is unbelievable how unknown Nigeria is to the rest of Africans. So most Africans will tell you about Nigeria. They will talk about scamming. They will talk about, you know, the Biafra war. It ends there. They will forget that it's a potential 230 million people. So congratulations once again, Johanna. I think this was, you know, a door opener for Nigeria as well as the rest of the continent. Now, to go back to, I would like to share my highlight. I think my highlight for this summit was to see Africa, Francophone Africa, coming so eagerly to connect with Nigeria. And for most of them, as I exchange with people, Johanna, you can say, if you noticed this, it was their first experience. It was their first time to come to Nigeria. You know, for me, it's unbelievable. How do you allow yourself to stay away from such a big market when you are a key player in your country, and probably not so far? I'm also from Cameroon. It's only an hour away with Airpeace. You know, it's really one market, if we like. So to come back to your question, remind me again.
On the trade and business opportunities.
I think they are tremendous. They are endless, really. You're talking about, Cameroon is 30 million people, about. Nigeria is 230. Nigeria is 400 77 billion revenue. Cameroon is only 44 billion revenue. So you can see that, you know, anyone who leaves Nigeria to invest in Cameroon, the market is virgin. It's a small market, but with huge potential. And you take a country like Cameroon, we call it a small continent. Everything you are looking for, you will find in Cameroon. Be it solar, be it the forest, be it oil and gas, be it mining, you know, so there are room for collaborations.
Indeed. So, you know, looking at what is actually happening now, do we even have an idea of the picture of size of investments between some of these countries? I know in your work as a lawyer, as a commercial lawyer, you also advise clients on doing business. Where are some of the specific opportunities from a sector perspective, and what sort of transaction sizes are you seeing, or trade volumes between these countries?
So I would say that the opportunities at the moment, and I think it's a very public information in the sense that we see in the news how many I suppose banking institutions of Nigeria are going into Francophone countries. I can talk about Cameroon, of course, but obviously it's the whole region that is appealing. And the reason for it is obviously that Nigeria has a very strong sector here. And we, as Francophone Africans, we still have a very weak local market. We have some strong international players, but they're leaving the market.
This is the banking sector?
The banking sector,
okay.
Yeah. They're leaving the market. And the market is really open for grabs. And if you see the conference, there were a number of people representing institutions, public institutions, coming to talk about those opportunities. So I think banking is a very, very strong contender. Historically, we've had, with Nigeria, we have a very long border. I think it's about 1,500 kilometers. We had a lot of like informal trade, a lot of it. And, you know, spare parts, etc. is very known. But it's not, I think it's not really creating growth, right? But I think what we are seeing, at least what I see in my business now, is that I have a lot of financial sector, like, you know, banking and also financial services such as insurance for sure. But FMCG is huge. Distribution, agriculture, all these things. I actually think that with the crisis that we are facing in our countries, people are going back to the fundamentals. People will need to eat, right? So, like I said, food and all these sort of like simple products are huge. And like I said, banking, because there is such an obvious, you know, case for it.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people would say language may have been a bit of a barrier for Nigerian businesses who want to go to, and we're not even talking about the big multinationals like your Dangotes and co, some of the, you know, the medium-sized businesses, the middle of the market. And for some Nigerian businesses and operators, it's kind of been this unknown. Can you tell us whether these things are more myths or is it a reality? That some of these perceived barriers about doing business in Francophone Africa. I'd love to hear from you. Valerie, maybe we'll start with you.
I think these barriers are real. You know, language is a barrier, but it should not be a stop. It should not be a stop. You know, you have Nigerians going to Germany to study. They don't speak German. They leave Nigeria to go to Germany or to China or to Russia. So it's the same. So wherever you feel a stranger, if you know that you're going to Angola, you'll be speaking Portuguese, you might not be very encouraged. It should not be a stop to business. When we're going to banking sector, the biggest bank today in Cameroon is UBA. And 15 years ago, you had no Nigerian banks on the continent, let alone Cameroon. But today, UBA is number one, ahead of the historical bank, which is Société Générale. So it goes to show that there is potential, and I think about 3 years ago, even Access Bank is now in Cameroon. So we've seen that the last decade, many Nigerian banks have, you know, though they are smaller market, but they have huge potential. When I was working in Gabon, I remember it was amazing because Gabon is only 1 million population, and Cameroon is about 33 million population. Coca-Cola used to make more money, Johanna, in Gabon as compared to Cameroon. So yes, the buying power is also very important. The size of the population alone should not be, you know, a stop. But coming back to the language, I think today English is a global language. You know, it's a business language. When I think about my father, Johanna's father, they used to go to China to trade. These in the 70s, 80s, they used to go to Holland to buy things and goods to come and sell on the continent. So, and they couldn't speak any English. But today most people speak English, if not pidgin, or at least to business English. But now you have translator left and right. You have, you know, professional lawyers. It should not be a stop. So I will invite any Nigerian who is willing to go on the continent, you know, to not to look at the language, to look at the glass half full.
Well, fantastic. So, I know that it's nice to talk about the things that kind of bind us and unite us. And I've had my first share of experiences in West Africa. During the summit, I spoke about my travels between Mali and Burkina Faso as a young analyst researching business dynamics in West Africa. So, Johanna, I want to talk about some of the regulatory and legal challenges, because the knowledge of the laws that exist and how they work across different markets is quite key for a business going in. So can you tell us what some of those hurdles are? And what of some of the structures exist to help businesses enter new markets?
Yeah, and actually, it also ties back to your point about the language. Cameroon is a unique market for that. And I'm not saying it's the best or anything, I'm just saying that it is different from the rest of Francophone Africa. And the reason for it is that Cameroon has a dual system, legal system, and as a matter of fact, there are also 2 official languages, which are French and English. That's why I'm saying that although, for instance, the growth in Côte d'Ivoire is much higher, I find that a lot of actually my Anglophone clients, English-speaking clients, want to go to Cameroon first, because they know that they'll find somehow the equivalent of what they know, right? They can talk about anything they want in English, they'll get someone to respond to them. And they can actually draft documents in English, and these documents can be valid in court, which is not the case in purely Francophone countries that have French as the only official language. This is very important, because then people need to understand that although we can all speak in English, and I agree with you, we should encourage it, at the end of the day, there are actually rules about the language you need to trade in. And this is actually something that needs to evolve, because when you look at France, we're all inherited from France. France has made their model evolve. It used to be the case in France that contracts needed to be drafted in French. Now they've accepted the fact that if it's a well-known language, your contracts can be in that language. We need to get there too, So I would say that, we have very different legal systems. Let's not lie about that one. Now, obviously, you have helps. You have, legal advisors and the rest of it. But it is true that the problem we have is the lack of, I don't know if it's a lack of access of information, but even though someone typically sitting in Nigeria who wants to do business in Cameroon doesn't know how to go about it. And you're right, there are chambers of commerce. There's the lady from the CPC who was at the conference. She's the entry door, one-stop shop to go into Côte d'Ivoire. Obviously, you're not going to talk to her when you go to Côte d'Ivoire, but there are agencies there and ready to help. You need to be aware of those entry doors. And we, I think, collectively as Africans, need to do a better job at making sure that all this information is readily available.
Yeah, sure.
So what is sure is that, your legal advisors are definitely something that are very important, because it is very simple. Your Nigerian contract will 95% of the time not work in the Francophone context. And if you try, because a lot of people try, to just convert, literally translate what they say in Nigeria, then you're in trouble, because guess what? You sign that contract, you can't enforce it in court.
Yeah, that's a very good point about contract enforcement and understanding the dynamics there. Valérie, recently, just talking about the legal and regulatory challenges, there were some currency controls that were introduced into Cameroon, and I don't know if that also happened across the Central Africa region, whether Gabon or the Republic of Congo were also introducing such. But, that's one of the things that investors and operators in the past have cited. Currency convertibility between African currencies, changing my Naira to CFA, I have to first of all go through the dollar. Can you talk about the impact of what that has around the business dynamic?
It's a huge impact. It's a huge impact. And it's not only Cameroon, it's the whole CEMAC region.
The CEMAC is the Central Africa regional body. Yeah.
Including Cameroon, Gabon, Congo, Chad, Central Africa, and
Equatorial Guinea.
Yeah. And what happened is, today in Cameroon, if you want to travel out, you cannot change more than 5 million CFA, which is about $10,000. What can you do with that, Olake? So it stops business. For transfer, same thing. What you see in Cameroon today is easier to find dollars on the black market than in the bank. So literally, if you say, I need X amount of money in dollars, you can have it. Any amount, you can have it. But if you go to the bank to request for dollars, you cannot have access. So it creates a second market. So this is an appeal, to different government. It's not working because people are stranded. And we're talking about multinationals who are willing to even make payment outside to their suppliers, etc. Everyone is stranded. It's a real problem. I mean, I cannot express it enough because you will not believe it's actually the case. For multinationals to pay their suppliers outside the CFA zone, today in Cameroon it takes about 2 months.
Okay.
If we're talking about huge money, right? Anything above, let's say, $1 million.
So how would you help them navigate that sort of challenge? Because clearly the fact that a policy or regulatory hurdle exists does not mean it's not possible to navigate. Because after all, people are still doing business in Cameroon.
It creates second layers, you know. People think plan B. And I think somehow the CEMAC region loses because now people do not have to exchange money. They will seek for a third party who can make the payment outside
the
for
formal
them,
system,
and then they will be able to deal. But
so,
this is not,
and that's a good point. So, Johanna, listening to that now, we're talking about trying to incentivize Nigerian investors into Francophone markets. And by the way, currency controls and capital controls are not something we're unfamiliar with.
I was going to say,
you know, this is not something we're unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
But in that sort of situation where a Nigerian business is even trying to get to know the dynamics of the Francophone market, and then you have a situation like this, what sort of advice would you give to a small business trying to navigate that sort of system?
On the current, like, you know, you mean like in
just
currency?
Yeah.
I think it's a real problem, but I do think that we have to understand that, especially in these days today where Nigeria is facing some real challenges with the Naira. I mean, the scarcity of dollars here is pretty much the same, I would say. We have the same problem at different levels because we still have some, you know, reserves, right? But I would say that you have to be ready for it. So the way they go about it, I would even say, is that everybody's aware of it now. So what they do is that they try to get there little by little, because the way to enter a market is not to go there and send, you know, you just go little by little. You have a rep office, you have something small. It doesn't cost a lot at all to start working in a country. The share capital is very small. If you are able to do your market entry research, it will take you about 6 months. So all this time allows you to arrange your business plan. The problem is that people would go sometimes and they think that because Nigeria is very difficult, or so they say, it's going to be easy for them to go to Cameroon. So guess what? They come on Monday. On Friday, they want to be able to had done everything, sent $1,000 million, everything. And I'm like, well, you know.
It doesn't work like that.
You know what I mean?
But I also have to ask you something before we go. You know, apart from language and culture, people often cite business culture. And it's not just a Francophone, Anglophone thing. We also find people talking about business culture, the difference between Nigeria and Kenya, or Nigeria and South Africa, Nigeria and Ghana. Is this really a thing in Francophone markets? And how does it vary, say, if you're in Senegal or Cote d'Ivoire, or Gabon or Cameroon? And what are your thoughts about the differences in business culture between Nigeria and some of the Francophone markets you're familiar with? I don't know who wants to. Yeah.
You want me to start?
Yeah, sure.
It's real. It's real because culture is important. Culture in Nigeria, people are very fast. In Cameroon, we are fast, but not as fast.
Okay.
And one thing we are known for example, is we go straight to the point in Cameroon. Qu'est-ce que tu veux? Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire ensemble? Whereas in other countries such as Senegal, you know, they take their time. They get to know you. They want to know who you are, who your parents are. The culture is very important. People are not as aggressive.
Even in the business context.
Even in the business context, you need to consider, you know, this very subtle way of doing business in various countries. I take Gabon, for example. If you go to Gabon and you want to meet any businessman, you can literally meet them in 24 hours. But you should not talk business first. You should talk about what you're bringing on the table for the country, for people, etc. You know, there's a context. In Cameroon, it's very straightforward and people accept that. I believe Nigeria to some extent. Whereas other, maybe Muslim country, people are more tactical about the way they talk about business.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And, you know, Johanna, obviously the Francophone Africa Business Summit was the first of its kind. The attendance was very impressive. We had President Olusegun Obasanjo there. And I think what just this highlights is the fact that there needs to be more integration. We talk about after the African Continental Free Trade Area and regional integration and encouraging intra-Africa trade, which is still much lower than Africa's trade with the rest of the world. So what are your hopes and aspirations for the future of this summit? And what sort of partnerships would you be looking for from government, from the private sector, to really make this become something that a lot of Nigerian companies jump on board on if they have market entry aspirations across the continent?
Yeah, no, I think, as you said, I was very grateful for the attendance and for the quality of the people in the room. It was really impressive, even for me as an organizer, because until the end, you never know. I think going forward, I was very strategic about the people that we invited, because I wanted to have the key people who make a country so that they understand that we can work better together. And I think the general takeaway I got from people, the attendees, is that they got the message and they're willing to work together. And I'm saying, I'm an enabler, you're an enabler. We're all enablers in our own ways. So I'm saying that we now have this forum. It's about us now to make it work. And as you said, the public sector was there yesterday, and they saw the value of it. As you said, representatives from Côte d'Ivoire, Cameroon, etc. were there, and they themselves, they were able to say, oh, I met with this person, they want to do things in my country, oh, I need to follow up. So I'm saying it's fine. We worked, we helped you, we made it sure you could come here and tell your story. We had translators and everything to make sure it was workable. Cameroonians, Congolese, etc. Now it's your time. We can only go so far. My honest belief is that if we do not work hand in hand with the public sector, we cannot go anywhere. Yeah. So what I want to see next time is that we have actual, real commitment from those sectors now in the next sessions. And
we need to have their commitment, because there was a visa issue. Some people struggle to actually get to Nigeria. And I know Nigerians have that problem in other countries. So I think if we're really going to be serious about trade and economic collaboration between Francophone and Anglophone Africa, we have to look at the political and government level and see how we facilitate visa and travel access.
And I really have to I'm so thankful for the Congolese, delegation. We had about 30 people from Congo. They had to connect. I don't know how many flights per week they are able to have. None of them are direct to Nigeria. As you said, visa issues all the way. It was impossible to get here.
Yeah, in fact, this is such an important discussion, I think. Thank you so much, Johanna, Monthe, and Valérie Neim, for being here from Invicte and also Epina Law, and of course, convener of the Francophone Africa Business Summit.
Let's hope
you're very welcome. De rien, as we say in French. Well, and au revoir. Well, that's all we have time for now on Business Week. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. If you want to follow the conversation and continue it, let's find each other on X online. Do have a lovely weekend ahead. I'm Rolake Akinkubefelani. Au revoir.